My relationship with dad after he cheated. Well, I caught my dad's affair when I was 12. We were having dinner in the kitchen, mom, dad and I was looking into my dad's phone to see if there were any interesting stuff in it. I came across a short video of a woman talking or smiling at the camera. I didn't know who she was and I showed them the video, asking who she was. I didn't expect an affair at all from my dad. But I think my mom understood what was going on because all hell broke loose. They started yelling at each other and went to the bedroom to fight. My dad's first reaction was to yell at me for going through his private stuff. Although I was looking at it for a couple minutes and he didn't say anything until I found the video. They decided to stay together. I ended up being my mother's psychologist for a couple years, until I went to boarding school at 14, which was really damaging for me. It sucks to see your mother that weak and out of control, when you are quite anxious yourself about the fate of your family. Also, she would guilt trip me when I wanted to spend time with my friends on holidays and such. I felt quite guilty about the whole thing for years, I think because of my dad's reaction and my mom's guilt trips mostly. Also because I revealed the affair. Now I understand better, that it was their shit and not mine. My dad and I were never really that close. For years after that day we only talked about superficial subjects like sports and other stuff and never addressed the issue. I was in boarding school since I was 14, so we drifted apart even more. Needless to say, the affair deteriorated the already weak relationship between me and my father. I for a long time had thoughts like why he didn't love me or show any attention to me, was there anything wrong with me, etc. I was bullied a lot in elementary school. I thought that might be the reason why he didn't show me any love, because he was embarrassed of me or something. But I guess it was just them having marriage problems and him not being a very affectionate or attentive parent in the first place. Now my relationship with my dad is almost non-existent. We leave together in summers but I hardly talk to him. I also resent my mom for not pulling her shit together sooner, took her 10+ years, guilt-tripping me into listening to her during her hour-long crying and anger episodes, and not giving me any sort of help while I was in boarding school and trying to go through adolescence while being bullied by shitty roommates. Caught my dad cheating at 17 years old. Told him to cut it out or he'd never see me or my daughter. I'm a teen mom, again once we moved out. Basically an us or her situation. Never told anyone else in my family and he started coming home on time, being more involved, off his cell phone, etc. Parents later divorced about 8 years later. When they separated the previous year, my mom told me it was because he was making a lot of phone calls late at night and she thought he was cheating. I still never told her about the previous incident. My mom confided in me a lot during that time and it really ruined my relationship with my dad, because I knew it wasn't the first time and I was holding on to this huge secret. It all came to a head 2 years ago when I got married and mentioned my dad walking me down the aisle. He responded that he wasn't sure I wanted him to, which broke my heart. He then asked to bring his girlfriend, the one he was definitely talking to during the marriage, and since he was paying for a lot and hadn't asked for anything, I said yes but knew my mom would freak. Ended up in a huge fight where I basically told my mom the divorce ruined my relationship with my dad and I wasn't going to let it do that anymore. My dad and I have since fixed things, although we never really had a conversation about it, but we talk and see each other much more often. My mom still makes comments to make me feel guilty about not remembering my wedding because she was so stressed out about the other woman being there. I love her but she's the kind of person that everything is about her, and during my wedding I learned I had to just accept that. My parents cheated on each other. My dad, my mom and their best friends went to Vegas one year and cheated on each other with each other. My dad came back married to his best friend's wife and my mom came back with her best friend's husband. They didn't marry though. I was young when it happened and didn't really know what was going on, but when I got older I found out what had happened and it kinda messed me up for a bit. I'm much older now and my dad has since divorced again and I don't really think about it anymore. My relationship with both of them is fairly normal I suppose. I don't hate my father, but when I found out that he'd cheated on my mother, with prostitutes, while she was pregnant with me and for years after, I lost all respect I had for him. I think he's an overgrown, self-centered man-child, and I'm disappointed and embarrassed by him. I know that my parents never should have gotten married in the first place, they're completely incompatible and only stayed together because of family pressure, but it's not like he genuinely found love with somebody else. He was just a gross John paying women to sleep with him so he could feel more masculine. Uck. He's an old POS now and I really don't hate him, but it's hard to see him as anything other than a loser. He always talks about the deep respect he had for his wise, hard-working father, but I'm never going to be able to feel that way about him. It's kind of sad. I found out when I was 18 or 19 that my mom had been having an affair off and on my whole life. It came out when my dad found out she was on a cruise with the guy and not her best friend. While I felt bad for my dad, I had always known their marriage was not right for my mom. My dad barely talked to her, he was buried in his hobbies and stoned all the time. She was staying for myself and my younger brother, and supporting the family financially the whole time. I forgave her. Honestly, it helps me see her a complex person and not just my mom. My parents divorced after that unfolded, and actually the other guy passed away so I never met him. My mom had actually dated him before she met my dad. She'd met him in law school. My dad cheated and the woman ended up getting pregnant. I was a child, 9 years old, holding my pregnant mother while she sobbed because he left to go see the other woman who was also pregnant. My siblings were literally born 5 months apart. It was traumatizing for all the kids that were in the middle of this. Our families were very close because of us kids. So we all felt guilt. The woman, who we call the AP, and her husband ended up splitting but my parents didn't. So there was a lot of fighting in our house, and him leaving to go visit them was a blessing. This made me hate my dad for a very long time to the point I cut him out of my life. But now my siblings are almost seniors in high school and I can honestly say my parents' relationship has never been better. And my dad and I have a good relationship. He may have hurt my mom horribly and I'll never forgive him for that. But he was a great dad to me and my brothers. I dated a girl for a couple of years whose mom cheated on her dad after 26 years of marriage and 7 kids. She was 15 when the shit hit the fan and the whole thing messed her up pretty bad, but her dad took it the worst apparently and became very bitter toward her mom, understandable, and soon became an alcoholic. I'm not excusing his behavior, but I don't really blame the guy. Anyway, my ex lived with her dad for several years and had to deal with his shit. So when she finally moved out she didn't really want anything to do with her dad, but her mom did everything she could to get in good with the kids. So even after their mom destroyed their family, the kids don't really like their dad and love their mom to death. I never really understood it, but it wasn't my place to question it and was nothing more than a witness to it all. Flash forward to now and I have a class with her dad. He's a pretty cool guy now so I don't really get why they hate him so much. Oh well. Dad cheated on mom when I was 5. I didn't find out until 15 years later, but I did find it weird that my mom and I moved interstate for 6 or so months and then they made up and we moved back as a family. They lasted another decade, then divorced. My dad never really wanted to be a parent. He was more focused on his own dream of becoming a successful musician. It never panned out for him and he got hooked on meth for a while. He ran out of money a while ago and now lives with my grandma. It's pretty sad. I talk to him occasionally, but we're not that close. He is prone to rant about conspiracies, so I always try to keep the conversation light. We talk about music and movies and internet stuff. I found out she cheated on him 12 or so years after the fact. I was surprised to learn that she cheated with a man. She divorced my father for a woman and I grew up thinking my mom was a lesbian who never came out. Learning of the cheating made me realize she wasn't just a closeted lesbian, but bisexual and unhappy. Gave me so many mixed feelings. I'm proud of her but also hold contempt for not keeping our family together for my sake. Ups and downs. Selfish and selfless. It's tough to judge her as I get older. My parents cheated on each other, though years apart. My mother cheated on my father while he was deployed to Iraq around '05. I was about 10 at the time. She kept bringing this strange man around my siblings and I under the guise of him, helping us out while dad was away. Sure enough, my father returns home from the war wounded and suffering from PTSD, but she kept seeing this person behind our backs. He found out about 8 years later, and out of spite cheated on my mother with someone in his chain of command, just to get back at her. I don't blame my father one bit, as it was the manifestation of the emotional pain my mother had caused him in between those years. My parents' infidelity had given me some severe trust issues, but I'm trying to become better than that, because their mistake will not become mine. I still love my father, while I cannot forgive my mother to this day. My dad cheated on my mom when I was young. We're still trying to rebuild our relationship from before was old enough to realize the truth. He has told me that if a guy ever did the same thing to me that he did to my mom, he would beat up the guy. Ironic. P.S. The only way my mom knew he cheated was because as a child, he took me to play with the woman who he cheated with and her child. I asked my mom if I could play with the nice lighter woman's kid. She was Puerto Rican, we're black. My mom asked me more about and eventually I was like, Daddy took me to see the lighter lady and her kid. I want to play with him. Shit hit the fan after that, but, LOL, I can't remember it. Me and my siblings basically despise our father, not because of what he did. We can understand such trivial things, that if it's not working why force it? And we're old enough to understand such things, but what really triggered us is what he did after they split. He keeps on putting the blame on our mother for their failed relationship, citing that it was her fault and she's not been a supportive spouse/parent. That she has no time for our family. She's a bloody nurse WHO works at a graveyard shifts, of course she won't have time for us, as mornings for her is basically rest to her. When in reality she never did any wrongdoing of the accusations that he made, and you know what's more sad? Our relatives in our father's side, believe his bullshit of story, that she is cheating, all sort of crap. Till this day we're still angry for the lies and slander that he keeps on doing to our mother. I know a similar story. My half-sister, who I consider my sister, lived with her mom until she was 10. Her mom had cheated on my dad after she was born, while they were in a relationship. Her mom told her so many lies about my dad and blamed him for the failure of the relationship. Her mom was also a seriously abusive alcoholic and brainwashed my then young sister to lie to the cops and CPS when they did surprise check-ins. After a surprise raid by CPS, my dad finally gained custody and shortly after I was born. She has now cut all contact with her mom, and even though she had a small issue with drugs during her high school years due to her childhood, she still considers her sibling. My mom also adopted her and 16 years later she comes down to our house with her 2 kids every almost other week. The only time she's even spoke about her biological mother was when she was shit-faced drunk this past New Year's. That's where I got the story. My parents were married for 18 years. Him and his secretary were married 18 years. They have now been married to each other longer. I basically don't have a relationship with them because of the way things went down. They devastated my mom. My dad even let his family think my mom had an affair. She was fully single for well over 20 years before she started dating, which singled him up, and he then started dating his secretary, who I recall asking me a lot of questions about my dad before the affair started. She wanted a man with money. After they got together things became about her kids and my brother and I were left in the dust. We were upset about the treatment of our mom and we had to get over it. My dad is a narcissist and his wife is just a horrible person, who isn't in contact with any of her siblings or nieces/nephews because they all have issues. What's the common denominator there? After deciding a few years ago to just let them go, my life has become a happy stress-free place. When I was in elementary school, my mother sat me and my brother down to tell us that our father was cheating. However, my mother did not want to destroy our relationship with our father, so she talked about how he was weak rather than evil. She did this because she was raising 3 boys and she knew that we, as boys, would someday face the same temptations that my father faced, and she didn't want us to assume that our father would only cheat because he was evil, and that because us boys were good, it wouldn't be so difficult. She knew it would be just as difficult for us boys as it was for our father, and she wanted us to make sure that when we inevitably faced temptation we would be able to recognize it as such and overcome. My father didn't really leave with us, but he always tried to be involved, albeit to a limited degree. He and my mom always did their best to put their own concerns aside to put us kids first. That being said, Our father left our house when we were young. Now when he sees us, he will watch my brothers and I talk to each other about whatever and just smile quietly and glance at his phone. He wasn't around us during our most formative years, and just can't relate to us anymore. There was definitely pressure to take sides, and doing things with my dad, the cheater, could cause some uncomfortable tension from my mom. It's been maybe 6 or 7 years since he had an affair, and he went on to date that person, have 2 other kids and another affair during that relationship. Everything is still pretty awkward, but I can't say it changed my relationship with my dad much, except that I don't see him very often because of where he lives. My dad made bad decisions, but he's my dad, you know? I don't feel any type of way about it. My mom was the one that cheated. I didn't find out until fairly recently. I needed a copy of the divorce for something and that's how I found out. She cheated on my dad and got pregnant with my little brother. I was about 4. I had always wondered what had caused them to split. Our relationship is kinda rocky even before I found that out, and I honestly don't hold it against her. They were young and stupid and had me literally a year to the day after they met, so it probably wasn't going to last anyways. There's a lot of resentment for her being with my ex-stepdad who was mentally and emotionally abusive to me and my siblings. So yeah, the actual cheating hasn't had really any effect on our relationship. My abusive dad cheated when I was 7. Even before, when he was working overseas to support us. But one time, apparently he wasn't able to send money financially. My older sis argued with him via Facebook chat regarding that. Unfortunately, that was the moment when he said that he's abandoning us and we shouldn't use his surname now and all that shit. 13 years later, recently this summer, he messaged my sister and wanted to meet us again. Of course we were happy. We spent our time on a resort as a family. Mom allowed us to go, but she didn't go with us. The sad part is, he'll only support us if we meet his other woman and if we're in good terms with her. What the hell? So we noped off. He blocked us. Never contacted us again. My dad has been cheating on my mom for 9 years. She can't divorce him because she has no job and we would go homeless. She still loves him and I hate it. I found out about his first serious relationship when I was 9. He wouldn't even come home some days. My mom didn't know how to drive at the time and we had to starve sometimes because there was no food. She learned how to drive the next year and that's when she was diagnosed with depression. She would overdose literally every day and somehow survived. My dad didn't take her to a hospital and even beat her up during their arguments now. This went on for 4 years. By the time I was in 9th grade, I even got to know my dad had aborted his baby with his girlfriend because it would affect his reputation. I was so close to my dad before he cheated. Now I hate him and I don't call him dad anymore. We are just strangers living in the same house. I'm closer to my mom since I'm older now, but our relationship also went bad when she got depressed and it was only recently we made up. My dad, on the other hand, we talk now but we don't love each other. He buys me anything I want but I shouldn't ask for love since I ain't getting any of that. After dad was caught cheating, it clearly influenced the rest of us. I mean, when your father does something, even when you know it's bad, it kind of makes it okay, right? So anyways, after we caught him moving his ball during the mini golf game, we all started doing it. Shit got out of hand and I don't think anyone played a fair round after that. Dishonesty can really change a family. My dad cheated on my mom with the secretary she hired for his business. My dad and the secretary are still together and deny the affair ever happened, but the secretary has gotten drunk a few times at family gatherings and spilled the beans. I found out about the affair when I was 13-14 and my mom and dad stayed together until I graduated. I have zero hard feelings towards my dad or his girlfriend. Also, my mom is a much happier person now and I can see the light inside of her again. I think the affair was a good thing for my mom in the long run. It's been a while now, I'm almost 30, they still avoid each other but are at least cordial. When I discovered that my mom was cheating on my dad, I kept it to myself, but I naturally gravitated toward my father from then on. When I was about 5, my mom took me to meet her trucker friend. He had this awesome big rig, and it even had ATV in it, and he set it up so I could watch TV in the front while my mom spent time with her friend in the back. Now, as a 5-year-old, I had no idea what was going on back there, but I knew I wasn't supposed to talk about it. Years later, I knew what had been going on back there, but I was too ashamed to admit it. I don't think I ever mentioned it until just now actually. At any rate, I became much closer to my father. And years later, when my parents divorced, I never gave any thought to living with my mom. She had irreparably damaged my trust in her. When I was 14, I found out that my stepdad had been cheating on my mom with many different women throughout the last 3 or 4 years. I responded by treating him less like a person. I started making fun of him and felt no remorse. I made some really cruel jokes about him. I said/did things to him with no fear of consequence, because my go-to excuse was, "Who are you to judge me?" I was a shithead. I recently found out that he cheated on her again, and now I'm handling it by treating him like a person, but not an important person. He's pissed off that nobody really wants to have a connection with him and wants him out of the apartment as soon as the lease is up. I found out my dad cheated when I found the papers for the paternity test. I was 16, so I wasn't a little kid, but it happened when I was 4, so it was very shocking to have a half-sister kept secret from me for so long. It made a lot of the hostility between my parents make a lot more sense. Mostly it made me just wish my parents had called it quits a long time ago. They had a terribly unhealthy relationship and took it out on me and my other 2 sisters that lived with us. I never even met my half-sister until I was 21 or 22. I don't know if it's normal to have a meltdown or freak out or anything, but I never did anything like that. Just sort of, maybe because of how shitty my parents' relationship was, it just made too much sense to get upset over. I happened to walk in on my dad with my best friend's mom, while they were both still married. The first thing I did was call my friend, told him to go to his house and see it for himself. The following morning I had the wonderful job of telling my mom what had happened, which was especially fun cause my dad had come home later in the night. At first I was furious with my father. Couldn't understand why he would throw his family away. But now years later I've come to stop thinking this way. His action had nothing to do with me or any of my siblings, the actions in question were completely about his relationship with my mom. But now that my dad is out of the house, I have assumed many of his household responsibilities and all I have to say is, my mom's a B and I will be leaving shortly.